The Detroit Lions have spent the offseason attempting to upgrade their roster. The question is, how good did General Manager Martin Mayhew actually do? Here to answer those questions and a whole lot more about your Detroit Lions is Lions beat writer Carlos Monarrez for the Free Press, who rejoins us this afternoon on the Two-Man Advantage Podcast. Carlos, good to see you, and thanks for being here this afternoon.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kevin.
So, the Lions have made a clear commitment through the draft to try and upgrade their running game with the selection of Laken, Tomlinson, and Ameer Abdullah. So, can you tell me whether you think they've accomplished that goal? And just give me your overall impressions of their draft class.
Yeah, they obviously have a need to improve that run game. They finished the season ranked 28th in the NFL out of 32 teams. So it was a glaring need. And you need to have a little bit of balance because, if you only do one thing well, the teams tend to, opposing defenses tend to tee off on you. They can just sit back there and wait for the pass coming from Stafford. So they needed to have a little bit more of a run game component. And obviously when they got rid of Reggie Bush, they released him this offseason. That was a sign that they were going to need another type of Reggie Bush, a speedy feature back. Joyke Bell is not that back. He's more the power between the tackles runner, get you 3-4 yards, maybe, 2 yards here and there. Ameer Abdullah, they drafted him. He's definitely that Reggie Bush mold, a smaller, faster back, has, can catch the ball out of the backfield. He had some fumbling issues, but he's supposed to be a good catcher, works in space well. And Laken Tomlinson was their first round draft pick. He's going to be left guard. That offensive line is going to go through a lot of changes this year. They're replacing potentially 3 players on that offensive line. So that's going to be in flux. So whether it actually works out, that's a different question, but they're obviously addressing a need and they know they need to get better running the ball. So, and for the record, I gave them a B- in the Free Press on their draft overall. So I think they did, to me, they didn't really hit a huge home run. I don't think they found any guy there they really stole or, that remains to be seen, but just, they filled holes and needs. All the players seem to be high character guys. And part of the high character is not necessarily just that they're going to keep their noses clean, but I think after being bitten by Ndamukong Suh being in free agency, I think they want more of the Calvin and Stafford guys who stay around in the long run for their second contracts. I think Mayhew and the Lions feel a little burned that they had Ndamukong Suh for those 4 or 5 years, and he jumped the first chance he got and took the big money, not that much more money, but just some more money in Miami instead of sticking around. So I hope they think these guys are going to be part of the future long-term going forward.
And the Lions have spent the last couple of weeks signing a whole bunch of veteran players like Lance Moore, and they just signed Corey Wooten the other day. So, what do you think the veteran signings that they've had recently will do to fill out the roster, and how would you grade those moves to fill out the roster going the veteran free agent route?
It's really hard to grade them right now. I don't know that. My first inclination would be to say that I'm not really that impressed with anybody that they signed. Lance Moore has been cut from 2 teams in 2 years. There's a reason why. He's older. He just doesn't have that speed anymore as a receiver. Who was the other guy? Corey Wooten. Same thing. I mean, he had a good season 2 years ago for the Bears. Played last year for the Vikings. Didn't do anything. So they're kind of backup guys, rotational guys. Maybe they've still got some magic left in them. But I will say, George Johnson, nobody knew that he was going to have 6 sacks in him last year. Defensively, on the defensive line, the Lions know how to use those guys effectively. So Corey Wooten, they do need a little bit more depth on defensive end. So that could be help for them. And they seem to know who helps them and who fits well. So you might see something out of Wooten. But these guys now in free agency is, toward the back end of it. These guys are just looking for a team to sign with now. They're not really stars anymore. Haloti Ngata was, I mean, he really wasn't a free agent, but they traded for him. He was their biggest offseason acquisition. But otherwise, Tyron Walker, these kind of guys, they're rotational guys. They haven't been stars on their teams. Last year was Golden Tate that they went out and got in free agency. This year, nobody really liked that, has stood out. But they're filling out the roster, more rotational guys, depth guys. Maybe somebody breaks out and has a George Johnson year. But for now, just experienced veterans, I would say, that might help them with depth.
And in terms of their undrafted rookie class, one name that stood out is Zach Zenner, the running back from South Dakota State. So if you could give me just a general thumbnail on your impressions from rookie minicamp and whether you think Zach Zenner has a chance to make the team, and just your thoughts on the overall undrafted free agent class itself.
Yeah, the undrafted free agent class is interesting because what happens is, when you're talking about your priority undrafted free agents, these guys were really close to getting drafted, but they didn't. So they were undrafted, and then right toward the end of the 7th round of the draft, they get a bunch of calls from teams, and it's kind of an advantage because they get to pick where they want to go. So they obviously want to pick the place where they have the best chance to succeed. They're not going to have as much competition. So right now I think that the way the Lions, or Zach Zenner probably looked at it, was the Lions don't really have a running back right now, a feature running back. There's some, who knows what's going to happen with Abdullah. He can come in there and compete, maybe play some special teams. He had 3 straight years, I think it was 2 or 3 straight years of 2,000-yard seasons at South Dakota State. A lot of work, a lot of stuff on his resume. So that could bode well. And the other player I thought in free agency, undrafted rookie, was Isaiah Johnson, the safety out of Georgia Tech. He's supposed to be a good tackler, a good special teams player. I'm assuming that James Ahedibo comes back, that he works out his contract and joins the team eventually. But you always need depth in the secondary. Those guys get hurt a lot, and second or special teams ability always helps. That's something that definitely they want to focus on. So those guys, Isaiah Johnson and Zach Zenner, were 2 guys you should keep your eye on.
Now, in terms of defensively, the Lions, as we mentioned, signed Gabe Wright in the 3rd round to essentially replace Ndamukong Suh and to pair him with Nick Fairley. Haloti Ngata. So can you give me your general impression on just how you think they've done in rebuilding their defensive line?
Well, I would say they haven't done a great job at rebuilding that defensive line. You lost Ndamukong Suh. You lost your three main defensive tackles last year: Ndamukong Suh, Nick Fairley, and CJ Mosley. Those 3 guys are gone. So you need to replace them. You've replaced Ndamukong Suh with Haloti Ngata, who's 4 years older. He's switching from a 3-4 defense to a 4-3 defense. He's still a good player, but he's not at the prime of his career. So I think he'll be fine, but I don't think he's gonna be, the dominant force that Suh was, for sure, and few people are. So, but you just have a lot of holes there. I think that Tyron Walker, I don't think he has the talent that Nick Fairley has, but maybe he has more consistency than Fairley has. So Gabe Wright, he's a 3rd round pick. I mean, I don't know if he's gonna necessarily be the heir apparent to Suh. It might take him a couple of years to get going. So we'll see. And the one strength of that defensive line and their thought process has always been about rotation and swapping guys in, making them versatile, having them move around on the line a little bit so the guys are fresh. And that's a credit to their coaching staff, Jim Washburn, the D-line coach. So if they can do that and they can work these guys in specific situations that are beneficial to them, they can get the most out of them. So Gabe Wright, I wouldn't expect him to come in and be a star right away. But, you have had history with the Lions, guys like Sammy Hill, who were not hide-around draft picks, but the Lions saw something in them. They developed it, and they went on to have, great success with the Lions. So Gabe Wright, I think that there's potential there. We'll just see what happens this year and going forward.
And what do you think about the notion of the Lions trying to take the air out of the football, run the ball a little bit more, and become a more balanced offense? I think back to Dallas when they were trying to convert that 3rd and 1, and they decided to throw the football. So, what do you think about Caldwell's attempt to sort of remake this team into a power running offense? And do you think there'll be a more balanced offense this year?
Well, yeah, that's what they kind of hope, I think. I don't know if they really want to be a power run offense. I think that they just want to be able to run the ball, like you said, in short yardage situations more consistently. A lot of that has to do with the offensive line, and obviously. So you need to have that trick in your bag when you can, so you can go to it. And I think they've talked a little bit about loosening up the offense for Stafford, actually letting him take a little bit more command of that offense. And I don't know about airing it out quite, like deep throws, but just, trusting him a little bit more, because that offense just really had a hard time going last year. And there's a lot of reasons why. But a lot of it was also the game plan. They didn't want Stafford to lose games like he did at the end of 2013. They wanted him more ball control. But with ball control, you have to run the ball. And that's what they struggled with last year, with Reggie Bush getting hurt, the offensive line struggling. So I think this year they know, the two sides, the pass game, the run game, they work hand in hand. So they definitely want to have that run game component, so that if you have a 3rd and 1, they don't have to throw it. You can run it up the middle, whatever, run it outside, do something, have more variety in your attack. That's basically balance. But I wouldn't say that they're looking for a power run game necessarily. They just want to be effective in the run game and set up the pass that way.
From a veteran player standpoint that's already on the roster, James Adenabo, as you had mentioned before, is holding out for a new contract, and DeAndre Levy, his contract is nearing an end. So I'm wondering if you could give me an update on that, those two situations in particular, and whether you think the Lions have a veteran core established enough to make another run at the playoffs, and then secondarily, how do you think the changes in the division as a whole will affect their chances?
Well, for the contract stuff, I think that Adenabo is going to find some kind of medium with the Lions. So they're gonna reach a deal at some point. Both sides need each other too much, and I think Adenabo had a good season. He was probably underpaid last year, and especially for his production. And I think he worked really well with Glover Quinn. So I don't really think the Lions want to mess with breaking up that tandem. Jim Caldwell and Martin Mayhew both said, they understand the situation. Mayhew was a player in the NFL, and he went through a contract dispute as well, so they get it. And I don't know the numbers. I don't know what Adenabo's looking for, but I would expect him to get a little bit of a raise, come back in time for training camp, and they'll be fine. And as far as Levy, I mean, they definitely want to extend Levy. He's one of the better linebackers in the NFL. Smart guy. He can play outside. He can play inside. He's versatile. So he produces. So they definitely want him around, and I don't think he's going to have any trouble, signing with them. He'll be happy to stick around Detroit. I don't see anything. I would imagine, I don't know if it'll get done right before training camp, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets done before the season kicks off. Yeah, the core is fine. You're just. I think they're like a lot of teams. They have a good core of veteran players, which is great. You have some age concerns. Calvin's getting older, and Stephen Tulloch's coming off of his knee injury, and there's always little things like that. Haloti Ngata is another one where, he's been very durable in his career, but he's getting older. So 31, I think he is. So you have to be a little bit concerned about age. But, you have young veterans like Stafford, who, and even Golden Tate, those guys are going to be around for a while. You can depend on them. They've been very durable. So I think that they're fine there. Um, I would say that this is a team that can make the playoffs. The only question I have is just the offense because, last year the defense was amazing. I don't think they'll be amazing again this year, but I think they'll be somewhere in the, top half, top 10, 12-ish of the NFL. They shouldn't take too much of a step back, even with the loss of Sue and Fairley. But that offense just really needs to get going. It just didn't do. The offense almost looked scared at times last year. They just could not move the ball effectively, and that's, I think, what you need to do to win games consistently. The Lions had to rely on their defense far too much last year. You just can't ask that of the defense year and year again, especially when you have, Stafford and Calvin. You should be able to, and Golden Tate, you should be moving the ball easier. So that's the question to me. I think they can make the playoffs, but I think that offense needs to take a step forward, and that's the question. That's the million-dollar question. Can they do that? I think they should be able to. And then as far as changes in the division, I mean, I don't think that there's anything. Well, the Bears are there's a new regime. They're who knows what's going to happen with Jake Cutler. He was under the gun. Can he be more effective? Can that Bear, the Bears are always a question mark. And when you count them out, they suddenly seem like they're back near the top of the division. The Vikings, I think, with Teddy Bridgewater, he showed a lot of improvement last year.
Almost beat the Lions.
Yeah. And
it was Ford Field anyway. Yeah.
It was impressive because when they first played him early in the season in Minnesota, he was terrible. He was a rookie and he struggled, and then he really, was on top of his game when they came to Ford Field. So I think the Vikings, and I think everybody respects their coach. Mike Zimmer, really good defensive coach, and they won't have Adrian Peterson, I don't think. So that's another question, but the Vikings should take a step forward. The Packers are still the team to beat. There's just no question with Aaron Rodgers, and they made it to the NFC Championship. So they should be there. They're gonna. I don't think the Packers have made any. They haven't had any significant loss. It always seems like there's a offensive lineman who gets hurt in training camp with the Packers, and then who knows what happens. But the Packers. They need to do something. I mean, I think with the Packers, they're always looking forward to the playoffs more than anything else. And that's in Green Bay, that's the stick. That's the measuring stick, is how you do in the playoffs. So division crowns are fine, but Aaron Rodgers knows, the clock's ticking a little bit, is he going to get another Super Bowl? When are they going to get back to the Super Bowl? That kind of stuff. But I think the Packers right now would be the hands down favorite in the division. But the Lions could be right there. I think, just taking a guess, I would think most, analysts in the NFL would assume the Packers are going to win the division and the Lions will probably be second and maybe, challenging for the title.
And can you just give me your general impressions on their schedule itself?
On the schedule, well, they start off on the road. I think it is
first 2 games, yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be a little bit tough, and it was funny because we were talking to Glover Quinn, and he had the whole schedule in his mind. He'd already, they go to Seattle and everything, and he's like, well, we'll see what happens in Seattle. That's going to be a tough game to win. The Broncos are here, it's not an easy road. And I want to say last year, I believe they had I think it was in the second half of the easiest schedules last year. That's all before the season, obviously, but I think this year that they're going to have a harder road, and I think at the end of the season too, they play on the road more. So it's making it to the playoffs at the end of the season, the last 4 or 5 games. You're tired, you're banged up, injuries, who knows? I mean, everybody has injuries, but I think that the schedule isn't necessarily that favorable to them. The one thing they get a neutral site game with a London game.
Against Kansas City, yeah.
Against Kansas City, tough team, but at least it's not in Kansas City where it's a really hard place to play in Arrowhead Stadium. So, hit or miss, we'll see. I mean, it's not the worst schedule in the world, but it's also not the easiest.
easiest.
I don't think it's as easy as it was for them last year. So they'll have a little bit of a harder road, I think, to get to the playoffs this year because of the schedule.
And heading into training camp, what are some training camp battles you'll be keeping an eye on in terms of making the roster this year? What areas should we be keeping an eye on to watch?
Well, I think that some of the ones that you can, it's so hard to tell in training camp, forget stuff like running back or whatever, but you can see the guys that get, more rotational, work and stuff. I think my question would be the center, Travis Swanson and Manny Ramirez, who's going to be the starting center there. We'll have to see the right tackle. If the Adrian Waddle is back, I don't think he's going to be back for training camp, but if he is back, partial ACL tear, is he going to be the starter, or Cornelius Lucas at right tackle, or possibly somebody else? So right tackle, center on the offensive line, return man Ameer Abdullah is supposed to have, be able to do punt and kick return. So whether he beats out Jeremy Ross, the incumbent who struggled a little bit toward the end of last year, that'll be a big question. Everybody always wants to know about the returner. Everybody assumes that there's always some hidden Devin Hester somewhere who's going to, break out. But yeah, return and offensive line. Elsewhere, I'm not sure that I have a real, dying need. I mean, your third receiver, your fourth receiver, we'll see who they use, but we know Calvin and Golden Tate are going to be the top two receivers, so there's not a big question mark there. I would assume that Ameer Abdullah is going to have basically the one, if you want to call it the starting running back spot, but 1-2 with Joique Bell. So not a whole lot of questions really going into this camp, just offensive line and, to me, the return guy.
And finally, Carlos, going into this draft, I remember you had a segment with Dave Burkett on the Detroit Free Press website where you talked about whether Martin Mayhew's job may be on the line. Going into this training camp, when it's all said and done with the draft and free agency, do you think that Martin Mayhew's job may be on the line if the Lions don't come out and finish strong this year? And when it's all said and done, also, how do you forecast this season? I know it's early, but if you could give me a thumbnail on that as well.
Well, I don't think his job is on the line. The Ford family doesn't really pull the trigger quickly on people and on their staff, and that can be good or bad. I know it frustrates the fans because in the fan world, if you have a bad season, everybody should be fired. But the way I look at it, I don't know if the Fords do. I think they look at it more this way, and I think it's the right way to kind of look at a general manager is, did he put enough talent on the field? And I think that Mayhew has done that. I think he's done well in free agency, undrafted, rookies. He hasn't done great in the draft. I think that's where you would like to do better, but he, at the end of the day, he's put enough talent on the field. You can't say the Lions have not had the players to compete. Coaching has been another issue, and whatever production and whatever you want to, however you want to peg that. But I don't think he is. I think you would hear rumblings by now that he's on the hot seat. And the thing with Mayhew too is that he's a smart, calm leader, and he has his vision of how he wants to do things. And I think he has a lot of respect in that building. So for that reason, there's a lot of stability there that you wouldn't want to mess with. And they've been threatening to get in the playoffs every year, pretty much, that he's been general manager after 2009, I guess. So they've been taking steps forward, and I don't think he's in danger. There'd have to be some colossal mess up. Now, I think the high character guys, that's one reason that they've drafted high character guys, because if nothing else, these guys aren't going to be busted for DUIs and wife beating and all that stuff, So I think that helps a general manager's, if you're not drafting jerks out there, that helps you. You're not embarrassing your owners. So I think he's fine. Yeah, I have him. I think the last time I went through the schedule, I had him at 7 and 9. This was before the draft. So Obviously, things can change, but I think everybody's kind of looking at it around 8 wins, give or take. Some people with 9, some people with 7, some people maybe 10. But I don't see them beating the Packers. And the Packers, you have to remember, they had kind of a slow start last year. They struggled. They got handled in Seattle, and the Lions beat them here early. So they came back and obviously became the Packers at the end. So I think the Packers, if they don't have significant issues, they should be the champions of the NFC North. So I don't see the Lions taking them down this year, but overall, I just don't see the Lions have gotten much better. I just don't see that. And one of my bigger concerns is when your biggest star on the team is Calvin Johnson, and he's having more and more injuries, you have to worry about his longevity, how much he can play. He missed 2 or 3 games last year. Yeah, and so it's always a question of just who stays healthy, who produces. They have enough talent, but I just don't see them having gotten that much better. Now, the one caveat on that was the first year in that offense for Stafford and Calvin and everybody else. If they can tweak that enough and that offense can get somewhat better, they have a lot better chance of winning more games.
Well, Carlos, I thank you for your time and for joining us again on the Two-Man Advantage podcast.
Oh, my pleasure, Kevin. Anytime.